anything seems hard, but then once you get past it, you're like, wow, that was actually really exciting and fulfilled me that much more. I'm learning that there's always a new challenge and it's exciting rather than look at it like it's scary. Get outside of our comfort zone and go for it because you'll just be that much happier on the other side of accomplishing that goal.
In this episode, we talk book writing, podcasting, and the difference between turning a hobby into a business and creating simply for the joy of it. I was joined by Shannon Russell, author of Start Your Second Act and host of the top 2% global podcast, Second Act Success. It was a fun conversation. I hope you enjoy. Shannon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Kate. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm really excited because you have such an interesting career and you help so many people live a more fulfilling life. And you also are creating so much of your own content. You write books, you have a top 2% podcast. There's a lot going on in your world. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you do and how you help people start businesses with their passion. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about your creative process, how you think about creating, and how you get it all done, Shannon. That's what we all want to know.
I do too. Yeah.
Let's start with what it is that you do, how you serve women, and through the services that you offer, and then a lot of the content you create with your podcast.
Yeah, I really focused on women who want to start over and start a second act because I did that. I left my television career, opened a business, and then decided to coach other women on how they can do that. I just feel like I try to help the woman who feels stuck and maybe that their career isn't aligned and they know they have this creative idea. They want to build something of their own. And then I help them kind of take that idea and bring it to reality, which is really fulfilling.
That's so cool. And you have a podcast that serves those women too. So if someone is not working with you directly, they still get lots of knowledge on what does this look like? How can someone go from, oh my gosh, I really don't feel fulfilled in my role to, is it possible for me to start a business doing something that I love?
Yes, and in the podcast, Second Act Success, it really the whole point of me starting that a few years ago was I want to share other stories of other women who made a transition, who left something that didn't feel right to create something that kind of lit them up. And so throughout the podcast, I share so many stories. I think I'm on like episode 203 at this point. But it's fun to share those stories and have listeners say, wow, if she can do that, if she can leave her teaching career and make jewelry, whatever it is, like I can do it too. And so I like to be able to share those stories and then solo episodes of just, okay, strategically, how can you do this? So it's so much fun.
That's so awesome. I love that. And so before we press record, I was asking Shannon, I'm like, okay, let's talk. I want to talk a little bit about should everyone really start a business? Like, this is something that I find so interesting in this world where it feels as though people are very pushed to, we all need to have freedom to do whatever we want whenever we want. And that means you have to have a business. And if you are not fulfilled at your job, then you have to go start a business. And I have just seen it. I have seen so many people who it just isn't for them. And then they feel bad because it's not for them. And so you mentioned that you have some stories, because those are stories that I think are important for people to hear too, because it's not this black or white situation. It's not like you either work for someone and you're miserable or you are on your own and it's beautiful and great. Like, there are challenges to choosing both of those things. And it is up to every person to decide what is going to work best for me. Where am I going to feel most fulfilled? And so I want to hear one or two of the stories of someone who thought, yes, this is it. I want to start a business. But really, because of your work and helping coach them through it, have decided, oh, wait a second, maybe there are some creative pursuits that I can incorporate into my life that will help me be more fulfilled. And I can still go earn an income at my job and then do these things to bring me a lot of joy in my life.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I like to live my life as living with no regrets. Like, I don't want to have regrets at the end of the day. So for me, I'm like, ooh, let me write that book. Let me start that podcast. Let me do this. That's how I choose to live. And with my clients, I want them to feel that way too. So, yes, I think starting a business is exciting, but not everyone's up for the challenge or for the unpredictability of it, really. It's not stable like a 9 to 5 job. And so I have definitely had some clients who set out on the path of entrepreneurship and then realize it's not for them. But I think, Kate, that that is incredible in its own right because now they'll never have a regret for not trying. And one example is this client I had who was really feeling burnt out as a teacher, and she wanted to start a mindfulness business. So she was a mindfulness coach, really studied a lot of that, and she wanted to teach mindfulness to kids. And she created these classes where they would make a mindfulness toolkit and just really incredible ideas. But trying to build that business was really almost stressing her out more. And after a while, we had stopped working together. Her business was up and running. And a few months later, she reached out and said, I'm going back to teaching because it's just more stable than me constantly trying to grow and scale this business. And I was so proud of her because I think that's a very big decision to decide to go back. And I said, you know what? You already built this business and you can continue to grow it on the side. You can put it on pause, pick it up later, but you'll never regret not trying. And I think that's an important lesson for anyone who's listening who has just this little inkling of what they can do. And another example that, you were sharing one of your friends, who had an Etsy shop, and a friend of mine, I started helping her. She makes these beautiful, beautiful cookies. And I said, well, do you want help figuring out how you can go full time making these cookies and leave your job? And she said, no, absolutely not, because I love baking them. But if all of a sudden I get orders for 150 cookies for this wedding or this bridal shower, that's going to feel like work, and I want it to be more of a hobby. So I think that's just like your friend that you talked to me about off camera is that no, you have to think about if this is a joy and a hobby and maybe a creative passion that you have that doesn't need to have monetary value to it necessarily, but it's something you just enjoy doing. And I think as long as you're doing it, you're fulfilling whatever need that is that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to bring back doing things just for the joy of it.
Yes.
Just for the fun of it. It's become we live in this world where and amazing. Like, how cool is it that we live in a world where you can take a hobby, you
Mhm.
can start a YouTube channel or a podcast or an Etsy shop and you can earn a living doing what it is that was a hobby for you. And that's a beautiful, wonderful thing as long as you know that your relationship with that is going to change once you start a business, good or bad, right? Like there, and it's per person. And I just feel so, I feel like it's such an important message to share with people because first, like
Mhm.
that teacher, that's a lot of self-awareness to say, "Oh, okay, this isn't for me." And you know what? That's okay.
That's okay.
That's totally okay. And we can find fulfillment in lots of different ways. And for some people, it truly is to start a business and do their thing and because it's exciting and it's like this constant challenge. And for some people, it's really stressful and it's just not really worth it to them. And so both of those paths can be beautiful in their own ways. And so it really is up to the person. And I think just having more conversations and sharing those stories, that's why I love when entrepreneurs talk about not only their big wins, but they do talk about the challenges that they
Mhm.
went through.
Mm.
They talk about the 5 businesses that they started prior to the one that finally made it,
Yeah.
because that's what they really love to do. Like, they have the drive to come back every time and say, "I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna figure this out." And so and I love that you said living a life with no regrets. I have a question about this because I've been thinking about regrets more and more. I think it's a topic that once you kind of hit midlife, you definitely start thinking about more. You're looking back at things that the decisions that you've made and you're thinking about the next half of your life. And when it comes to regrets, how do you see regrets in like, when we're thinking about regrets, obviously no one wants to have a regret. And we've all heard that at the end of someone's life, what do we hear that like nurses that work at hospice will talk to people basically, that are about
Yeah.
to die and they will talk about their regrets and they'll say things like, I wish I had lived a life for myself. I
Mhm.
wish I would have tried that business. I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard. I wish I would have told people I loved them. And so often it is those things that we didn't try and not the things that we did try, right?
Mhm.
So to your point, like doing the thing, we have to at least try and do the thing. So how, if you're intentionally trying to live a life of no regrets, how do you think about, okay, this is what I feel like I want to be doing. These are the goals that or the dreams that I feel like I want to be pursuing. But how can I be assured that when I'm 80 or 90, I'm not going to have wished that my 35-year-old self or whatever age you are is going to wish that I had chosen a different option.
Well, I think it's then just having that goal, like that goal list. I just recently did a talk where it was about forgetting your bucket list and making a life list, a goal list, and checking all the boxes. Because maybe at 35, you want to travel the states in the United States. You want to go to every single state, see all the national parks. But maybe at 80, you're like, that was fine. I got to do it, but it's not that big of a deal. But you did it. You checked it off. You didn't say, and I think a lot of people with the bucket list will say, I'll get to it one day. No, I'll have that family reunion one day. I'll write that book one day. But why not try to do it now? And even a small action step, just writing down ideas for the book and then getting to it, slowly over time is better than sitting there when you're 100 years old saying, oh, I never wrote that book. So I think it's just shifting your mindset to say, okay, these are the things I really want to do in life. What can I work at a little bit each week, each month to get towards those goals and live just more presently now? And I think, especially because I speak to a lot of women who will say, "Oh, I just feel stuck, but I'm just going to wait till the kids are out of the house. I'm going to wait until retirement." And I just want to say, well, you can wait, but you don't know. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. So why not think of a strategic way that you can incorporate what it is that you want into your life now while you can do it? And I think it's just that mindset shift of thinking about making a change, starting that business that's not going to cause all of this chaos in your family and in your life, because maybe you do start a side business or you start an Etsy shop or an Amazon storefront, something that you can do while you're working your 9 to 5 that will fulfill that need to be a business owner in a more cautious way, maybe. But it's still like letting you accomplish that dream while you can and not just putting it off until someday, because so many of us say someday, 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 and then someday might not come.
Yeah. That is so true. And I love when we are intentional about having your dream list.
Mhm.
What is it that you really want to achieve? And then deciding which one of those things you're really going to make the priority. We can't do all the things all at once, but we can decide what are we going to make a priority and whatever that looks like. I know some people do this, and I think it's a good strategy to think about this year, what's the one big thing this year? If you just choose one big project and maybe that's the book, right? Like writing a book is a big project.
Yeah.
And so maybe your goal is not to write the book and start the business and the podcast and that's a lot. That's a lot of things that is required of you. And that's when I feel like people start to get discouraged because they're like, I can't do all this. Yeah, well, you went from zero to it's almost like when people start working out. If you work out 0 days a week, your
Right.
goal should not be to work out 7 days a week. Like,
Nope.
let's start the goal at, okay, can you do 2 days a week? We'll start with something and get some wins. So let's talk a little bit about your creative process because for someone like you do create a lot.
Mhm.
You have multiple books, you have a podcast, and you're creating content, and you have a website, and you have a business. So you're constantly creating content so people can find it, and you're bringing in new conversations and bringing in new clients. So that's a lot of work. First, let's talk a little bit about how do you think about your creative process when it comes to we'll either start with the book or the podcast.
Yeah, well, with the book, it was just like it was a lifetime dream of mine to write a book. So I let my family know about that. And I joined a program that was like a 12-week accelerator where by the end of this, you're going to have your first draft. And so every Monday for 90 minutes, I was in this class. And so I told my boys and my husband, okay, I'm going to be writing and taking this class. And I just closed the door. They knew they were excited for me. And so I felt less guilt in being that mom that, is working on a Monday evening writing in this class. So it started to become a hobby for me where that was my favorite thing to do was to get alone with my laptop and write for my book, not for business, not for anything else. And so it just became that almost self-care time for me. That was what I chose to do in the few minutes that I had free. And so I think any kind of creative process, if you can really enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work. And for me, I was able to create in that time where my family gave me the space and I could just concentrate and it was just me and my thoughts. And that's how I got the book done because I just liked that process. And when that class was over, I just kept working and I would sneak away and be like, okay, mom's going to write her book now and I'm going to close my office door and get to it. And I think it was fun and it made it exciting. And if it wasn't fun and I didn't enjoy it, it would have been harder. It wouldn't have been the easy creative process that I wanted it to be. And I think that as a creative, I think in writing in television, which I used to do as a producer, I would write scripts, I would write marketing copy. And so I'm just taking that now to write things that mean a lot for my business now. So I love writing blogs for my website. I love writing scripts for my podcast. Like I just get really excited to be able to use my writing skills in all aspects of my business. So it doesn't feel like work when I get to do that.
So many writers that I talk to will say they love to have written. They don't love writing. But you seem like you like the process.
I do. I do. I feel like my brain works like a puzzle almost. So I love in television, they would give us an idea for a show, and I had to figure out all the pieces to get that idea onto the screen. And so my brain works like that. Like, okay, I want to write a book about this. Let me take all of those pieces like a puzzle and put it together and make this book or make this podcast or help my client build this business. So I think that's just how my brain works, that I enjoy that creative process.
What was the biggest challenge for you in writing the book?
I think it was, and still is, the marketing aspect of it because
Mm.
writing the book, I originally wanted to write fiction and then I thought about it and I still do want to write fiction, but I said, you know what? I'm going to write Start Your Second Act because it's really everything I teach in my business and teach in my course. And I wanted people who didn't necessarily work with me one on one to have something in their hand, like a tool where they could actually get the advice and the guidance that I give my clients. So I figured that was more of a priority to get out there. So it was tricky to actually take all of my ideas and pieces from the podcast and the blog and kind of fit it all together. But once it was done, it was like, great, this is my baby. How do I market it? And I think that is still the hardest part of figuring out how to show up in the world with the book and get it in front of new eyes and new readers.
Coming from your background in production and writing, like that feels like you do have to get really good at copywriting. I'm, like, obsessed with copywriting. People that are great copywriters, I think it's so much fun to study language, to study writing, especially around copywriting, to really help people. Well, it's the best books in the world, right? Like, the best books in the world, they say what they are intending to say. And I think a lot of, especially nonfiction books, they have a lot of fluff. I feel like they're longer than they really need to be. They can say a lot of what they want to say much shorter and more clear and more succinct. And that's what great copywriting is. And so how what are some of the things that you see in copywriting, in other books that you read, in blog posts in general? Like, what are some of the mistakes that people are making in writing?
I think it's exactly what you just said, making it longer than it should be and adding in fluff. And I talk a lot. I'm a wordy person, but when I write, I try to pare it down because I know the attention span of the customer or the reader or the client. And I know for me, I don't read blogs because they're so long and there's so much. And I'm more of a bullet point, give me what I need to know person. But I think you're absolutely right. I think everything is too long nowadays, and especially for our attention spans and whether that's website copy or blogs or books. I just read a really popular book, nonfiction. And when I read it, I was expecting something so different, but really it was the same lesson taught in different ways in every chapter. And I was like, am I missing something? Like, I'm not learning anything in all of these chapters. Like, everyone's praising this book and I didn't get it because it was just the same thing over and over again.
You don't wanna say the book?
I don't know. It's a very popular book right now.
I bet I know what book you're talking about.
I bet because I've talked about it with other people and I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh, you're like me, I'm like, "I don't wanna talk ill of anybody
I
or
know, yeah.
anybody or anyone's content."
And I love this person, but I just found, oh, like, I think people just feel like you said you have to have a bigger book or you have to just have more. But really, everyone wants bite-sized information that they can take and implement right away. So it doesn't need to be that wordy, right?
Yeah, and I think this is part of the creative process. Everyone has to figure out the I don't think that it necessarily means that it shouldn't be longer. It should be as long as it needs to be to clearly state what it is that you're trying to say. For example, Alex Hermosi, so his books, right? Like $100 million offers and $100 million leads. That's pretty big, but it's a pretty thick book. It's a bigger book, but man, he says everything you need to know and he lays it out and he gives you examples. There's a reason why his book has almost 30,000 reviews and it's like got 4.9 stars on Amazon. It's an incredible book. And I also think about Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone has read Atomic Habits, right? James Clear. That's on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
That's a thick book.
Exactly.
But he lays things out and he gives all these examples and he does feel like it's necessary to put everything in there.
Mhm.
And that's what I love about so Matthew Kelly is one of my favorite authors. He also happens to be the founder of the company that I run. So he's written like over 40 books. And I'm sure that when he writes a book that's, let's just say it's 60,000 word book or whatever it is, I'm sure he had to write hundreds of thousands of words to get down
Yeah.
to that 40 or 60,000 words. It's so much of the editing, which I find
Mhm.
so interesting. So, but I feel like with your background in production, you must pinpoint those things so much because I can imagine if you're trying to sell a story, if you're trying to
Yeah.
sell an idea, it has to be so clear and succinct. Like, what are you trying to say?
Yes. Yes, but giving the examples, I think that is such a way to write, right? Give your story examples, give those bullet points that really drive that idea home. And that's what I love in books, like Alex's, right? Or in Atomic Habits. Like those are great examples of like, well, here's a story that supports this. Here's an example. Because as you're reading, it just nails it into your head that many more times where you're going to take it away with you as you close that book. And I think it's the same with copy for, commercials and marketing for television shows. It's giving that example and making that person want to watch because you're telling them exactly what you're going to get and you're teasing them and you're giving these stories. Yeah, and it's the same with writing or writing a podcast or writing anything really. It's just being succinct and painting that picture, I guess.
Yeah. All right, let's go to your podcast because podcasting is such an interesting topic right now, especially because it feels like Shannon, everyone's got a podcast, and I mean, even all these famous celebrities now they have podcasts, and we're like, wait, but
Can they
let
stop?
us have a medium that you guys have access to all of Hollywood, and
Really?
so I'm curious because I'm sure that you have a lot of women that come to you want to start a business and they want to start something creative like a podcast sometimes. What are some of the ideas that people come to you with, and then how do you help them get started when it comes to starting up something like a podcast?
I think a podcast is such a great, like, complementary aspect of your business because and for me, when I began my coaching business, I started the podcast on the same day as I started the business itself because I wanted to just be able to reach people in a different way, like in their ear, letting them get to know me and get to know my guests. And so when I do speak with people about their business, not all businesses need a podcast, but depending on the personality of the client and what they're trying to grow, a podcast can be such a great complement to that, depending on their personality to really drive back to what they're offering. So I love being able to help people and direct them in that direction. But I want to make sure that people know that it's, as you and I know, it's a long game and you can't just, or you should not start a podcast, do 20 episodes, and then let it go. You don't want to pod fade like that. You want to actually keep it up and it's going to be out there. It's going to be searchable and it's always going to lead back to what it is you're doing. So I think if you have a business that you're creating that can reach more people that isn't necessarily just a local business with local customers or clients, then yeah, a podcast is a great way to just get more people to you. And if you take your podcast and you make it a blog on your website, that's just another way for people to see you. And now you're posting content on social and then you're guesting on podcasts, it just all leads back to your business in that way, in an organic way, really.
You said not all businesses need a podcast, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a good lit" I wrote, "Not all businesses need a podcast, but all podcasts need a business."
Yeah.
Because I think that if someone's trying to monetize if you wanna monetize your podcast, I mean, I have friends that they do very well with their podcasts, and they have a six-figure business because of it, but the bulk of the money that they make is through the courses they sell, the services that they sell through the business because of the relationships that they're building, which brings me to because one of the conversations that I know a lot of people are curious about is when you start something and you put it out into the world, whether it's a podcast, YouTube, or blogs, or a book, and you already said marketing is the hardest part. I feel like marketing is the hardest part for a lot of creative projects, and so sometimes people can feel very it can feel challenging when you put something out and people aren't finding it. So, how do people find your? I mean, you have a great podcast, and now you have a good listenership, and I'm assuming that starts to get the ball rolling, and more people find it, more people recommend it. But for someone that's just starting out, do you recommend advertising? How do you recommend people promote their creative projects?
I think you have to be willing to tell people about it. I think so many people, and you probably know a lot of them too, Kate, is that they start something, but they're so afraid of what other people will think that they keep it to themselves. And I think it's important to share it on your social media with your friends and family. Let them know the journey that you're starting so that they can share it. Because everything, I guess the best marketing is that word of mouth referral. And so when you do start a podcast, and you have your idea of what business it's going to drive to, start promoting it, start guesting on other podcasts and get in front of other people's audiences to share what you're doing. And see what you can do, whether it's mentioning it in different Facebook groups or on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot because I feel like, especially, well, for my business, but for a lot of people's businesses, just to let other people who are business focused know, hey, you've got this podcast and this is what you talk about. These are the type of guests that you're looking for. By putting it on LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, you're reaching more people and then they'll share it and repost it. And I think that's obviously the easy, organic way to grow. But ask for those referrals. You can do some ad spend if you want, but use your email list. And organically, I think it does drive back to your business. And for me, a lot of my clients come as listeners who have spent time listening over the last few years and say, okay, I think I know you and I enjoy what you're teaching. Let's work together. So that's where I think the monetization of the podcast can really come together.
We were talking earlier before we hit record around Descript, which is a really great tool for editing. And Shannon said, "Oh yeah, I love the editing process." So I want to talk a little bit about how you think about editing your work before putting it out. What does that look like? Like, how does that? Do you script your episodes? When they're solo episodes, do you have canned questions that you ask everyone? How do you set things up, and then how do you think about editing it?
I definitely script out bullet points for solo episodes because I need that to keep my direction when I'm talking because I am a talker and I'll just go off on different tangents. So having those bullet points of the places that I want to hit is really helpful. And so I try to keep my solo episodes like 10 to 15 minutes max, which is nice. So I can just really take any little whim of a topic that I think about and make an episode out of it. And then editing wise, I really just put my produced open. And I take out the ums and ahs just because I think it makes no one wants to hear that. And with my guests, I don't script anything. I think it's my past career of interviewing celebrities that I'm a really good interviewer. So I just kind of wing it and I want to hear their story. And so I organically just know how to ask the questions. But I do ask if the conversation is going really long, I'll just always ask, what's your advice to someone who wants to start a second act? But if I have some time, I have my 5 fast cues, which are all kind of related to that, that I try to end every episode with. So I always have those in my back pocket, for guests, and then definitely wanna make sure that my guests feel and sound polished. So I take those ums and ahs out. If they end up rambling too much, I'll take out enough because I want it to be succinct and make them sound as great as they can because they're offering so much great advice to the listeners. So I want it to be perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like as a podcaster, it's our job to make the guests sound great, as great as they can.
Then they wanna share it too, and I think it's important to have them share it, and I put all of the episodes on my website. I have a page where I have every link of every podcast I've been on because I feel like that backlink to that person is really good, and it just shows, another great conversation that you had, so
Ah. Is there something that is there something that you've changed your mind on over the past year? Something that you believe to be true that you no longer believe to be true?
mm, that's a great question. I think it's important to just keep having those new goals and take on new challenges because honestly, if you had told me 2 years ago that I'd have a book out in the world, I would have laughed. But in that time, I wrote it, I published it, I'm marketing it. I'm going to a book signing tonight locally. So it's just funny that you can take this idea, make it happen through all of the challenges. It's never easy. But then you get to the other side and you say, wow, I did that. What's next? Or at least for me, I'm always like, what's that next exciting thing that I want to tackle? And I think anything seems hard but then once you get past it, you're like, "Wow, that was actually really exciting and fulfilled me that much more." So I think I'm learning that there's always a new challenge and it's exciting rather than look at it like it's scary, but like get outside of our comfort zone and go for it because you'll just be that much happier on the other side of accomplishing that goal.
How important is it for you, and do you have I call them creative friends, right? Like creative friends it's like we need supportive friends, and those can be maybe your spouse or you have people in your life that are cheering you on, but they're just kind of they don't have this desire to create. But then you have creative friends and they're writing books and podcasts and they're putting in the work that only creators understand the challenges of it mentally and physically, all the things, right? So how important is that to you? And do you have creative friends in your life?
I do. It's so important. And I have different pockets as you're talking. I'm like, I have this one group of friends, and we're in a messenger chat that are YouTubers and podcasters. So we do talk about content all the time. And, they give me tips on how to take my podcast and put it on YouTube with a better hook or a better, thumbnail. And so we talk about that. And then I have author friends that I talk with now. And I have two friends I talk to all day, every day that started when my first business was a franchise, they were other franchise owners. And so we've grown from having a 9 to 5 job to getting into our first business. And now we all have other businesses. And so we talk all day, every day, the three of us, about any kind of business challenge and any kind of creative idea that comes up and how we can help each other with it. But those are things that I don't talk to my husband about or my best friends from college about because they just don't understand it. But these women do. So 1,000%, Kate. I think it's so crucial to find those people.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you have different groups. That's so cool. All right. I would love to know because everyone always wants to know tools. Is there a tool, a resource, a book, something that you have really been loving that you've just recently discovered, or something that you love, just a resource?
Mm. I think Descript, obviously for podcasting, absolutely. I'm trying to think. I worked with book launchers to launch my book, and they're not necessarily a tool, but if you're writing nonfiction, they were a wonderful resource to just walk with you every step of the way to get the book out. I absolutely love them. It was a wonderful experience. And I read all the time. So I read books like I read The Alchemist over and over again.
Oh, I love
I'm
that
trying to
book.
think. Atomic Habits is here. I love this book by John Acuff. I talk about it a lot called Finish. And it's really about finishing your goals and how we all start things so often, but we don't necessarily finish. So that's a really great one that I like to refer to people or recommend to people because it's if you're thinking about starting something, it really talks about the benefits of finishing that goal.
Mm.
So that's a great book, I would say.
Have you read his book, Soundtracks?
No.
Oh my gosh. If you like his work, his writing, his book I'm telling you that I recommend that book to so many, especially women, because it's all about overthinking.
Oh my gosh, I
And
need
if
that.
women are good at something, they're good at that.
I will get that. Thank you for the recommendation.
Oh, yeah, it's a great book. And that's so funny. So you worked with Julie and her team at Book Launchers.
Yes.
So
Did you?
so great. That's how I started with my book.
Oh my gosh. I love
So how
that.
funny is that? I did what you did. I was like, "Okay, I wanna write this book." We didn't do a 12-week thing, but I had a writing coach. I used them and had a writing coach, so I worked with her one-on-one to help me through the process and become a better writer.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Yes, you can attest to them too. Well, I started with that 12-week course. And then after that, I went through the coach and the copy editor and the content editor, and they helped me launch. And yeah, it was like a year process. But
That's
I
cool.
always say at the time I was running two businesses and I have two boys and the podcast. And I'm like, this book is never coming out if I don't have that accountability partner to help me. So it was so worth just having that team to make me get it done. Right. As you know,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Oh, I love
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is why people need coaches. This is why coaches exist. They encourage you, they support you, they challenge you, and they hold you accountable because whether you have two like kids, a husband, a business, and anything, even if you have none of that going on, still people don't hold themselves accountable. So
Mhm.
I love that you work with them. All right. As you do, I have one question that I always ask people at the end. It is, what is one activity that we can do in 10 minutes or less to live a more creative life?
I would say walking and listening. No, I'm going to say walking and not listening to anything. Walking without the earbuds in, walking without being with someone else, but being alone with your thoughts, because I think we don't do that enough. There's so many distractions and technology. But when I go for a walk around the block, even without my dog, and I just am with myself and I'm listening to myself, I come back so reset and ready to work. So I would suggest that. Tune everything else out and spend that time with yourself for 10 minutes.
I love that.
Mm.
So, so good. Yes, it really is a different experience walking, listening to an audiobook or a podcast or something versus just, you know what, just enjoy nature.
Yeah.
Just be. Let's get back to those days when we got bored a little. We
Yes.
didn't always have constant stimulation like
Right.
videos and podcasts and all the things. So,
I agree.
well, Shannon, thank you so much for chatting with me. I love all of this conversation, and I know that it's going to help a lot of people. You know, we stop ourselves from trying to do some of the things that we really want to do. And so thank you for the work that you're doing in the world and really pushing women to create their second act. I love this idea that no matter what your past was, you have this new future ahead of you as long as you decide to take the steps to make it happen. So thank you for the work that you do. Congratulations on
Yeah.
your book and podcast and all your success. And I'm looking forward to continuing to watch you create more. So we will definitely stay connected.
Same. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you for having this podcast out there to encourage creativity in others. And I love it. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and it sparked at least one idea to help you move your creative projects forward. And if you are in a season of life where you are ready to design a new path, definitely check out Shannon's book, Start Your Second Act. You can also learn more about her and her work at secondactsuccess.co. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, go create something.